A hungry tummy and $4. The bell above the door of The Daily Spoon chimed a cheerful, albeit slightly tinny, welcome as Lily pushed through. The aroma of sizzling onions and stale coffee hit her first, followed by the clatter of cutlery and the low murmur of conversations. It was a familiar scent, one that usually brought a small, hopeful flutter to her chest, but tonight it only intensified the hollow ache in her stomach. Her worn sneakers scuffed softly against the checkered linoleum floor, each step a small testament to the distance she'd walked. She scanned the diner, her gaze darting past families laughing over plates piled high with fries, past solo diners hunched over newspapers, until her eyes settled on a small, unoccupied booth by the window. It was far enough from the bustling counter to offer a semblance of privacy, a quiet corner where she could assess her meager resources without feeling the weight of curious glances. Sliding onto the cracked red vinyl seat, she leaned back, the material cool against her thin t-shirt. Reaching into the front pocket of her jeans, Lily's fingers brushed against the crumpled bills. She pulled them out, smoothing them carefully on the tabletop. 2 $1 bills, their edges softened and faded, and a single crisp $2 bill that felt almost luxurious in its newness. $4. Exactly $4. It was a sum that felt both impossibly small and incredibly significant, the entire budget for her evening meal. Her stomach gave a loud, embarrassing growl, echoing in the relative quiet of her booth. She quickly pressed a hand to her midsection, hoping no one had heard. Her eyes drifted to the large chalkboard hanging above the counter, displaying the day's specials in looping white chalk. She always started there, even though she knew, with a sinking certainty, that the specials were almost always out of her price range. Today was no different. Meatloaf special, $12.99, it declared. Chicken fried steak with gravy, $14.50, her gaze slid down, past the chef's salad, $9. 75-inch and the grilled cheese and tomato soup combo, $8.00. Her brow furrowed in concentration as she searched for the smaller, less prominent items. The sides section was her usual hunting ground. A single pancake? Maybe. A bowl of oatmeal? Possibly, but she yearned for something more substantial, something that would quiet the persistent rumbling in her belly for more than an hour. Her eyes landed on toast 2 slices, $2. 50-inch and side of fries, $3.75, fries. That sounded good, greasy and salty and filling. She could get a side of fries and still have 25 cents left over. The thought brought a tiny, fleeting spark of hope. It wouldn't be much, but it would be something. It had to be enough. A waitress, a woman with tired eyes and a name tag that read Brenda, passed by, her tray laden with plates. Brenda glanced at Lily, offered a small, weary smile, and continued on her way. Lily returned the smile, a shy, almost imperceptible upturn of her lips. She folded her $4 neatly and placed them beside her, a silent promise to herself that she would make them stretch as far as they possibly could. The choice was made. Fries. And a glass of water, of course. Water was free. The cheapest choice. The scent of tomato soup and warm bread hung heavy in the air of the diner, a comforting aroma that usually made Lily's stomach rumble with anticipation. Today, it only highlighted the tightness in her chest. She clutched the crumpled $4 bill in her palm, the edges softened from repeated folding and unfolding. Reaching the counter, she scanned the brightly lit menu board, her gaze flitting past the tempting burgers and platters until it landed on the grilled cheese sandwich, $3.75. It was the cheapest choice, the only choice. Just the grilled cheese, please, she said, her voice barely a whisper against the clatter of plates and cheerful chatter. The waitress, a woman with a kind smile and a neatly tied apron, nodded. Coming right up, sweetie. Anything to drink with that? Lily hesitated, doing the mental math. A soda would push her over. No, thank you. Just water. With her order placed and the remaining quarter safely tucked into her pocket, Lily searched for a table. Most were occupied by families sharing laughter and large portions, or by solo diners engrossed in newspapers. She spotted a small, unoccupied two-top by the window, tucked away from the main thoroughfare of the diner. It was perfect. She slid into the worn vinyl booth, the seat cushion sighing beneath her, and placed her quarter on the polished tabletop. Outside, the late afternoon sky was a bruised purple, and a gentle rain had begun to fall, tracing silver rivulets down the windowpane. Lily watched a lone pedestrian hurry by, umbrella tilted against the elements, and felt a strange sense of calm settle over her. The diner's warmth, the soft hum of conversation, and the rhythmic drumming of rain against glass created a momentary sanctuary. A few tables away, Mr. Harrison twirled a forkful of spaghetti, his eyes crinkling at the corners as he observed the quiet girl. He'd been coming to this diner for years, a ritual since his wife passed, and he recognized the subtle tells of someone making do. The way she'd lingered at the menu, the soft-spoken order, the careful placement of her meager change. He'd seen that look before, a quiet resilience in young eyes. He noted her solitary vigil by the window, the way she seemed to find solace in the falling rain, and a gentle concern settled in his heart. His own plate, piled high with pasta and meatballs, suddenly felt a little too generous. Lily's grilled cheese arrived, golden and perfectly toasted. She picked it up, feeling the warmth seep into her fingertips, and took a small, deliberate bite. The simple combination of melted cheese and buttered bread was surprisingly satisfying, a small victory in a day filled with quiet struggles. She chewed slowly, savoring each mouthful, and continued to watch the rain, oblivious to the kind eyes that occasionally drifted her way. A sad sandwich. Brenda, a whirlwind of motion, set a plate before Lily with a gentle thud. "Here you go, sweetie. Grilled cheese, extra crispy, just like you like it." The aroma of toasted bread and melting cheddar wafted up, a small comfort in the vast, echoing space of Lily's hunger. The sandwich, cut diagonally, steamed faintly, the golden brown crust promising warmth. A tiny cup of pickles sat beside it, a splash of green against the beige. "Thank you, Brenda," Lily murmured, her voice a little reedy. She picked up one half, feeling the slight grease on her fingertips, a familiar texture. The warmth seeped into her cold hands, a small, welcome invasion. She took a delicate bite, barely disturbing the perfectly melted cheese. The saltiness, the creamy texture, the crisp snap of the bread, it was all there, just as it should be. Yet, the emptiness inside her wasn't entirely filled. The warmth spread through her mouth, down her throat, but it didn't quite reach the hollow ache that resided somewhere deeper, a place where $4 simply couldn't stretch. A sigh, almost imperceptible, escaped her. The sandwich was good, truly, but it couldn't mend a broken heart or banish the gnawing worry about tomorrow. Across the room, Mr. Harrison dabbed his lips with a napkin. He had finished his own, more substantial, meal some time ago, but had lingered over a final cup of coffee, his gaze drifting occasionally towards Lily. He watched her careful, almost ritualistic, approach to the sandwich, the way her eyes held a distant sadness even as she ate. He saw the small, almost imperceptible tremor in her hand as she lifted the bread to her lips. It was a sadness he recognized, a quiet burden carried with a surprising resilience. He wondered about her story, about the unseen threads that wove such a heavy cloak of melancholy around a young woman eating a simple grilled cheese. He signaled Brenda for the check, his movements slow and deliberate. He didn't want to seem intrusive, merely observant. He paid with a crisp 20, telling Brenda to keep the change. She offered a beaming smile, a flash of genuine warmth in the diner's artificial glow. As he stood to leave, he cast one last, lingering look at Lily. She was still eating, slowly, meticulously, as if savoring each bite, drawing out the small comfort it offered. The sandwich, a beacon of warmth in the cool diner, seemed to glow in the dim light, but it couldn't quite chase away the shadows dancing in Lily's eyes. He nodded almost imperceptibly, a silent acknowledgement of her quiet strength, and then, with a soft creak of the door, he was gone, leaving only the memory of his quiet presence. A quiet whisper. The clatter of silverware and the low hum of conversation filled Henderson's diner, a familiar melody to Mr. Harrison. He'd finished his coffee, the warmth of the ceramic mug now a pleasant memory against his palms. With a gentle nod, he caught Brenda's eye as she bustled past, a tray laden with empty plates balanced expertly on her arm. "Brenda, if you would," he said, his voice a soft rumble, "my check, please." Brenda, a whirlwind of efficiency, spun on her heel, a quick smile gracing her lips. "Coming right up, Mr. Harrison." She returned moments later, a small slip of paper tucked into a worn plastic holder. As she placed it on the table, Mr. Harrison leaned forward, his gaze drifting momentarily to the young woman, Lily, still nursing her water at a nearby booth. The almost imperceptible slump in Lily's shoulders hadn't escaped his notice, nor the way she'd meticulously counted out those few dollars earlier. "Brenda," he began, his voice dropping to a near whisper, "I'd like to take care of that young lady's meal." He gestured subtly with his chin towards Lily's table, then pushed a $50 bill across the laminated tabletop, folding it once to make it less conspicuous. "And, for her dessert. A little surprise." He offered a small, knowing smile. "Don't make a fuss, dear. Just, a quiet whisper of kindness, if you understand." Brenda's eyes, bright and observant, widened almost imperceptibly as she took in the crisp bill and the direction of his gaze. She understood perfectly. Her own smile deepened, a genuine warmth radiating from her. She quickly tucked the money into the check holder, her movements fluid and practiced. "Consider it done, Mr. Harrison. You're a gem, you know that," she said, her voice equally hushed, a hint of playful sass in her tone. Mr. Harrison simply chuckled, a soft sound that barely registered above the diner's ambient noise. "Just an old man enjoying his coffee, Brenda." He watched as Brenda moved away, a renewed spring in her step. Mr. Henderson, perched on a stool at the counter, polishing a glass with a well-worn cloth, had been observing the exchange from the corner of his eye. He was a man who missed little in his establishment, especially when it involved money. He offered Mr. Harrison a brief, assessing glance, then a slow, almost imperceptible nod. Henderson didn't need words to understand the quiet generosity that often unfolded within his diner's walls. It was a silent pact of community, played out in small, significant gestures. Mr. Harrison picked up his now empty mug, twirling it idly. He wasn't looking for thanks, nor recognition. The simple act of giving, of seeing a small burden lifted, was its own reward. The memory of Lily's carefully counted dollars, the subtle tension in her posture, had resonated with something deep within him. He remembered lean times, the gnawing anxiety of wanting but not having. He hoped this small, unexpected gift would bring her a moment of peace, a tiny spark of hope in what seemed to be a challenging day. He rose from his booth, leaving the check holder with the remaining change neatly placed inside. As he made his way to the exit, he cast one last glance towards Lily's table. Brenda was approaching it now, a tray in hand, a gentle smile already forming on her face. A quiet whisper, indeed. The big surprise. Brenda, her usual brisk efficiency softened by a genuine smile, glided towards Lily's table. The aroma of brewing coffee and sizzling bacon, usually a comforting backdrop, seemed to amplify the sudden change in the atmosphere. Lily had just finished the last bite of her toast, savoring the simple warmth it offered, when Brenda paused beside her chair. "Well, hello there, Lily," Brenda chirped, her voice a little brighter than usual. She wasn't carrying the check, which Lily noticed immediately. A flicker of confusion, then mild apprehension, crossed Lily's face. Had she forgotten something? Ordered something extra by mistake? "Hi, Brenda," Lily replied, a faint blush rising to her cheeks. She was already mentally calculating the $4 she had left, wondering if there was enough for a coffee to linger a little longer. Brenda's smile broadened, crinkling the corners of her eyes. "Good news, honey. Your meal today. It's on the house." Lily's fork clattered softly against her plate. "On, the house?" she repeated, her voice barely a whisper. Her brow furrowed, a mix of disbelief and a fleeting suspicion that this was some sort of mistake. She wasn't irregular, not in the way Brenda implied. She was always careful, always paid her way. "Yep. Consider it a little treat," Brenda said, leaning in conspiratorially. "And that's not all. There's a special surprise coming your way in just a moment. Don't you dare move from that seat." Lily's eyes, usually downcast or quietly observant, widened to saucers. Disbelief warred with a sudden rush of warmth that spread through her chest. A surprise? For her. She hadn't received a surprise she couldn't even remember. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of the unexpected generosity. Who would do such a thing? Just then, the gentle scrape of a chair from the next table signaled Mr. Harrison's departure. He stood, his movements unhurried, pulling on his tweed jacket. As he turned to leave, his gaze met Lily's. A soft, knowing smile touched his lips, and he gave a small, almost imperceptible nod, a silent acknowledgement that left Lily even more bewildered. He raised a hand in a brief, friendly wave, then turned and walked out of the diner, the bell above the door jingling his exit. Lily watched him go, then looked back at Brenda, who was still beaming. The suddenness of it all, the kindness, the mystery, left her breathless. The $4 in her pocket suddenly felt heavy, no longer a burden of strict limitation, but a small, unexpected reprieve. Her stomach, already full from the modest meal, now fluttered with a new kind of anticipation, a hopeful flutter she hadn't felt in a very long time. What could this surprise be? Sweetness and sprinkles. The scent of stale coffee and disinfectant usually clung to the diner air, a constant, dull hum. Today, though, a new, sweeter aroma cut through it all, light and beckoning. Lily glanced up from the menu she'd been tracing with a fingertip, her stomach a hollow drumbeat. Brenda stood beside her booth, not with the usual water glass, but with a small, white plate. On it, nestled in a pool of dark, glossy ganache, was a slice of chocolate cake. It wasn't just any cake, it was a generous wedge, impossibly rich-looking, and adorned with a cheerful cascade of rainbow sprinkles. They sparkled under the fluorescent lights like tiny jewels. "Thought you might need a little something extra today, hon," Brenda said, her voice softer than usual, a subtle warmth underlying her usual brisk tone. She placed the plate gently on the table, the ceramic cool against Lily's fingertips as she instinctively reached out. "On the house. Just a little pick-me-up." Lily's breath hitched. She hadn't ordered anything sweet, couldn't afford anything sweet. The $4 she clutched in her pocket was for sustenance, for survival. A wave of heat washed over her cheeks. "Oh, Brenda. I can't. I really can't." Brenda waved a dismissive hand, a knowing glint in her eyes. "Nonsense. Chef made extra, and it's practically begging to be eaten. Besides, who says no to a little joy? Consider it a secret menu item, just for you." She winked, then retreated to take an order at another table, leaving Lily with the glistening confection. Lily stared at the cake. The chocolate was so dark it almost seemed black, promising intense flavor. The sprinkles were a playful explosion of color, a stark contrast to the muted tones of her day. Hesitantly, she picked up the fork. The first bite was heaven. The cake was moist, almost melting on her tongue, the ganache a luxurious, bittersweet embrace. Each sprinkle offered a tiny, delightful crunch, a burst of unexpected texture. She ate slowly, deliberately, savoring every crumb. This wasn't just food, it was a gesture, a whisper of kindness in a world that often felt loud and indifferent. With each mouthful, the knot of tension in her shoulders began to loosen. The warmth of the cake spread through her, not just in her stomach, but in her chest, a gentle, blossoming happiness. A quiet, profound sense of gratitude settled over her. Brenda, who saw so many faces pass through these doors, had seen her. had seen something in her that prompted this unexpected, wonderful gift. It wasn't just about the sugar, it was about being seen, about an unsolicited act of generosity that shone like a beacon in her quiet, often lonely, existence. The sweetness of the chocolate lingered long after the last bite, leaving behind a lightness that felt foreign, yet utterly welcome. For the first time in a long time, Lily felt genuinely, profoundly happy. A promise under the rainbow. The warmth from Mr. Harrison's smile lingered, a comforting ember in Lily's chest. His easy generosity, the way he'd seen her without judgment and simply offered kindness, stirred something profound within her. It wasn't just about the meal, though that had been a miracle. It was the gesture, the unexpected hand reaching out. Sitting there, watching him finish his own dinner, Lily made a silent vow. One day, when her own fortunes turned, she would do the same. She would find someone who needed a hand, someone on the edge, and she would pay it forward. The thought settled into her heart, a tiny seed of resolve planted firmly in the fertile ground of gratitude. It wasn't a grand plan yet, just a burgeoning conviction, a quiet promise to herself and to the world. Stepping out of the diner, the cool air after the earlier downpour was a welcome contrast to the cozy warmth inside. The city hummed a different tune now, washed clean and vibrant. Each streetlight seemed to cast a brighter glow, each passing car a gentle murmur. Lily tucked her hands into her pockets, a contented sigh escaping her lips. She wasn't just full, she felt whole. The ache of hunger had vanished, replaced by a lightness she hadn't experienced in what felt like an eternity. She walked with a spring in her step, a feeling of immense luck bubbling up inside her. It was a strange sensation, this joy, after so many weeks of a dull, persistent worry. Today had been a turning point, a sliver of hope that had broken through the gray. As she turned onto her street, a gentle mist still hung in the air, catching the last rays of the setting sun. Then, slowly, majestically, an arc of brilliant color began to unfurl across the sky. It stretched from one end of the horizon to the other, a magnificent bridge of red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. The rain had truly stopped. Lily paused, her gaze fixed on the celestial display. It felt like a personal message, a brilliant affirmation of her earlier promise. The rainbow wasn't just a beautiful optical phenomenon, it was a symbol, a vivid testament to new beginnings, to the potential for beauty after the storm. She took a deep breath, the scent of damp earth and fresh air filling her lungs. The world, for the first time in a long while, seemed to be smiling back. And Lily, with her quiet promise under the rainbow, smiled too. "Thank you, kind stranger." The following Tuesday, the late afternoon sun painted long shadows across the familiar expanse of Elmwood Park. Lily, her usual route home taking her through the vibrant green space, noticed a figure on a bench near the willow tree, a figure she recognized instantly. Mr. Harrison. He was watching a flock of pigeons peck at scattered crumbs, a gentle smile playing on his lips. Her heart gave a little leap, a mix of shyness and an overwhelming urge to express her gratitude. She hesitated for a moment, her usual reserve threatening to hold her back. But the memory of the rich chocolate cake, the warmth of the café, and the unexpected kindness of his gesture spurred her forward. Taking a deep breath, Lily quickened her pace, her worn sneakers barely making a sound on the paved path. "Mr. Harrison," she called out, her voice a little breathless as she approached. He looked up, his gaze soft and surprised. "Lily, isn't it?" he said, his smile widening. "What a pleasant surprise." "Yes, it's Lily," she confirmed, feeling a blush creep up her neck. She clasped her hands together, a nervous habit. I saw you and I just had to come over. I wanted to thank you properly." He gestured to the empty space beside him on the bench. "No need for thanks, truly. But please, sit." Lily shook her head, remaining standing. The words tumbled out, eager and earnest. "No, I really do need to thank you. For everything. For the dinner that night, and, especially for the cake." Her eyes brightened at the memory. It was the best chocolate cake I've ever tasted, Mr. Harrison. Truly. So rich and decadent. It was such a treat. A genuine chuckle rumbled in his chest. I'm glad you enjoyed it, Lily. It's one of the cafe's specialties. It was more than just delicious, she continued, her voice softer now, reflecting the depth of her feelings. It was exactly what I needed that night. Your kindness, the warm meal, the incredible cake. It meant the world to me. More than words can say. She met his eyes, her own filled with a sincerity that brooked no argument. Thank you, Mr. Harrison. You truly are a kind stranger. He looked at her then, a thoughtful expression on his face, a flicker of something she couldn't quite decipher in his gaze. You're a very gracious young woman, Lily. It was my pleasure. He paused, then added, sometimes, a little kindness can go a long way, wouldn't you agree? Lily nodded emphatically, a genuine smile finally breaking through her shyness. More than you know, Mr. Harrison. More than you know. The breeze ruffled the leaves of the willow tree, and for a moment, the world felt a little brighter, a little less daunting. The joy of giving. A fragrant blend of warm bread and a subtle hint of cinnamon enveloped Lily as she stepped into the community center's small kitchen. Mr. Harrison, flour dusting his rolled-up forearms, glanced up from a mixing bowl, lines crinkling at the corners of his eyes. A genuine, unhurried smile, radiating a comforting warmth, instantly lightened Lily's spirits, easing the day's burdens. Lily, my dear. Perfect timing, he announced, his voice a gentle, resonant cello tone. These sourdough loaves are just about ready for their grand exit from the oven. The aroma itself works wonders, wouldn't you agree? Lily offered a shy nod in return. It smells absolutely divine, Mr. Harrison. Truly magnificent. She watched him carefully transfer 2 golden brown loaves to a cooling rack, delicate wisps of steam ascending. The simplicity of the act, performed with such evident care, possessed a quiet grace. You know, Lily, Mr. Harrison began, leaning against the counter, a thoughtful expression on his face. People often wonder why I dedicate so much of my time to this place, to baking, to everything. He gestured vaguely around the bustling, compact kitchen. And the answer is quite straightforward, really. It brings me immense joy. Lily tilted her head, observing him. She understood, in part, what he meant. Even the smallest kindness she'd received recently had felt like a lifeline. It's not about grand gestures, you see, he continued, his gaze drifting towards a window where the laughter of children drifted in from the playground. It's about the quiet ripple effect. A warm meal for someone in need, a listening ear for the lonely, a simple hello that acknowledges another's presence. These aren't monumental acts, yet their impact. That's where the true magic resides. He picked up a cooling loaf, its crust still radiating heat, turning it in his hands. I recall a period, years ago, when I was struggling myself. Jobless, feeling the world close in. An elderly neighbor, who barely had enough for herself, brought me a small plate of ginger snap cookies. That simple act, that tiny, seemingly insignificant gesture, reminded me I wasn't invisible. It reminded me that kindness still existed. Mr. Harrison met Lily's gaze, a profound understanding shining in his own. And that, Lily, is the heart of it. Those small acts of kindness, like a single stone dropped into a calm pool, create ripples that extend far beyond our imagination. They forge connections where we perceive only barriers. They ignite hope when shadows seem insurmountable. He smiled, a gentle, knowing curve of his lips. So, for me, the joy of giving isn't merely about brightening someone else's day. It's about experiencing the deep connection that blossoms from it. It's about knowing that even a tiny spark can set a significant fire. Lily pondered his words, a new perspective unfurling within her. She had always fixated on her deficits, on the difficulties. But Mr. Harrison perceived something different, the inherent power in human connection, in shared humanity, in the quiet, transformative strength of a simple, honest act of giving. It was a lesson she felt, deep in her very being, she was finally ready to embrace.